August 6, 1806, the date that erased a thousand-year empire from existence. But what if that crown had never hit the floor? What if, in that pivotal moment, the Holy Roman Empire had not dissolved into fractured kingdoms, but instead unified into a single, unstoppable nation? You're about to witness an alternate timeline that would have rewritten every major conflict of the modern world. The empire that controlled the heart of Europe for a millennium. Imagine it armed with railroads, industry, and modern military doctrine. This isn't just alternative history. This is the story of how the world's most powerful nation might have been born in the fires of Napoleon's defeat, and why its existence would have prevented 2 world wars while creating an entirely new global order. The pieces were all there. The will to survive existed. Only the vision was missing, until now. To understand what could have been, you must first grasp what the Holy Roman Empire actually was. Voltaire famously quipped it was neither holy, nor Roman, nor an empire. Yet for centuries, it was the beating heart of European civilization. Stretching from the North Sea to the Alps, from France's border to Poland's plains, this vast confederation contained over 300 semi-independent territories. Each prince, duke, and bishop jealously guarded their autonomy, yet all bowed, at least symbolically, to an elected emperor. The Habsburg dynasty had dominated this election for nearly 4 centuries by 1806, transforming a medieval electoral system into something resembling hereditary monarchy. But the empire's fatal weakness wasn't foreign invasion. It was its own structure. Imagine trying to command an army where every general could simply refuse orders. Picture a treasury where each province kept its own gold. This wasn't a nation. It was a living fossil, a medieval relic somehow still breathing in the age of revolution. Our timeline splits at Austerlitz, December 2nd, 1805. In our reality, Napoleon crushed the combined Austrian and Russian armies so decisively that Francis II realized the empire was finished. 9 months later, he formally dissolved it, becoming merely Emperor of Austria. But what if Austerlitz had gone differently? Not a complete victory for the coalition, but a brutal stalemate that left Napoleon weakened and Francis II still standing. In this timeline, a young reformer within the imperial court, let's call him Metternich's more radical colleague, seizes this narrow window. He convinces Francis II that dissolution means death, but radical constitutional reform means survival. The vision is breathtaking in its ambition. Transform 300 squabbling territories into a federated constitutional monarchy. Strip the princes of their vetoes. Create a central parliament, most radically of all. Grant representation not just to nobles, but to the rising merchant and industrial classes. It's a gamble that would have seemed insane, except the alternative is oblivion. Between 1806 and 1815, while Napoleon bleeds his empire dry in Spain and Russia, the reformed Holy Roman Empire undergoes the most dramatic transformation in European history. The Constitutional Edict of Vienna, proclaimed in 1808, is a masterwork of political compromise. The emperor retains executive power and military command, but a new imperial diet, with representatives from every territory proportional to population, controls taxation and legislation. The princes aren't eliminated. They're repurposed as regional governors with real administrative power, but no veto over imperial policy. The genius is in the details. German becomes the official language of government, but regional languages are protected. Catholic, Protestant, and even Jewish representatives sit in the same chamber. Most revolutionary of all, the empire abolishes serfdom in a single decree, creating a mobile labor force just as the Industrial Revolution reaches German lands. By 1815, as Napoleon finally falls at Waterloo, Europe doesn't face a power vacuum in Central Europe. It faces a unified German state of 40 million people, already industrializing at breakneck speed. Now imagine what happens when German engineering genius, already legendary, receives the resources of a unified state. The Ruhr Valley, the Silesian coalfields, the ironworks of Bohemia, all now feeding a single economic engine. By 1840, the reformed empire has more railroad track than France and Britain combined. Krupp steel works supply not just cannons, but rails, bridges, and the skeleton of modern infrastructure. The chemical industries of the Rhineland create the first synthetic dyes, then fertilizers, then pharmaceuticals. Where in our timeline dozens of competing German states raced separately toward modernity, here they pool resources, share patents, and coordinate development. The empire's population explodes, surpassing France by 1850, rivaling Russia by 1870. But this isn't merely economic, it's cultural. A unified German educational system, from elementary schools to research universities, creates the most literate population in Europe. German philosophy, music, and science don't flow from competing princedoms. They pour from a confident, unified civilization that sees itself as Rome's true heir. Here's where the timeline truly ruptures. There is no World War I. The entire chain of events that led to 1914's catastrophe simply cannot form. In our reality, a fragmented Germany unified through Bismarck's blood and iron, creating deep resentments and a militaristic culture. France, humiliated in 1871, nursed a wound that demanded revenge. But in this timeline, the empire unified peacefully, through reform rather than conquest. France faces no sudden German threat because the empire has existed for centuries. It's simply been reorganized internally. The Balkans still simmer with tensions, but without Germany's blank check to Austria-Hungary, which in this timeline is merely another empire carefully watching its powerful neighbor. The crisis of 1914 remains local. Russia mobilizes and then backs down because the Holy Roman Empire's army is the most technologically advanced force on the continent. The assassination of an Austrian archduke becomes a footnote, not a catalyst. The 20th century begins not with trenches and poison gas, but with the empire mediating European disputes from a position of unquestionable strength. But can an empire be democratic? Our timeline proves the tension is explosive. Yet in this alternate history, the empire threads an impossible needle. By 1900, the imperial diet has evolved into a genuine legislature with real power over budgets and domestic policy. The emperor retains foreign policy and military command, but even here, he rules with the consent of an increasingly confident parliament. Political parties span the ideological spectrum: Catholic centrists, liberal progressives, even a social democratic party that wins seats by advocating workers' rights within the imperial system. The key is the empire's federal structure. Bavaria keeps its beer traditions and Catholic character. Prussia retains its efficient bureaucracy. The Rhineland flourishes as Europe's commercial heart. Regional identity doesn't oppose imperial unity. It enriches it. When universal male suffrage arrives in 1905, decades before much of Europe, it doesn't destabilize the empire. Instead, it channels rising democratic aspirations into a system that bends rather than breaks. The empire becomes Europe's great experiment, proving that tradition and progress, monarchy and democracy, can coexist. Without two world wars draining its strength, the empire becomes something unprecedented, a European superpower that never collapses. By 1950, its population exceeds 100 million. Its economy rivals the United States. Its currency, still called the thaler in honor of tradition, is the world's reserve. The empire's global influence isn't colonial, it's economic and cultural. German becomes the international language of science and engineering. Imperial universities attract students worldwide. The empire's diplomatic corps mediates conflicts from South America to Asia. When the atomic age dawns, imperial physicists, many of whom in our timeline fled Nazi Germany, instead remain in Göttingen and Vienna, developing peaceful nuclear power under international supervision. The Cold War still emerges between the United States and Soviet Union, but it's a triangle, not a binary. The empire, democratic but conservative, wealthy but cautious, serves as Europe's anchor. Moscow cannot dominate Eastern Europe because the empire's economic gravity pulls Poland, Hungary, and Czechoslovakia westward. The European Union never forms because it's unnecessary. The empire already is the Union. But what does this timeline lose? Without the crucible of world wars, does humanity advance as rapidly? Our terrible 20th century drove innovation in medicine, aviation, computing, and space exploration. Wars forced social revolutions, women's suffrage, civil rights, decolonization. In the empire's stable timeline, change comes slower. Women gained voting rights in 1925, not 1918. Colonial empires dissolve gradually through negotiation rather than liberation wars, extending suffering in some regions. The space race lacks urgency without Cold War competition. Yet, tens of millions who died in trenches, gas chambers, and atomic fire instead live full lives. The cultural treasures destroyed from Warsaw to Dresden stand intact. The trauma that scarred 3 generations never occurs. Is faster progress worth such horror? The empire's existence poses an uncomfortable question. Was the 20th century's violence necessary for human advancement, or could we have reached 2024 through evolution rather than revolution? The answer shapes how we view our own history and our future. Today, in our reality, the Holy Roman Empire is a historical curiosity, remembered in museum exhibits and academic papers. But in that other timeline, imagine a world where the oldest continuous political institution in Western civilization still governs the heart of Europe, where an emperor traces an unbroken line not from 1806, but from Charlemagne himself, where the Latin phrase Sacrum Romanum Imperium still appears on coins and passports, where St. Stephen's Cathedral in Vienna isn't just a tourist site, but the coronation church of a living tradition. That world would be stranger than ours in some ways, more familiar in others. Monarchies and republics would coexist in ways we can barely imagine. Technology and tradition would blend differently. And at the center of it all, that ancient crown, the one that in our timeline fell and shattered, would still rest on a human head, connecting past to present to future in a golden chain a millennium long. Sometimes the most profound alternate histories aren't about what changed, but about what endured. What if the empire never fell? Then perhaps we would have fallen less.